Hey, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. As you can see, we just have one person that we are waiting to join, just sorting through a few technical difficulties from the side. But otherwise, we didn't want to sort of fall into the Filipino time, issue that we usually are well regarded for. So we're going to get going anyways, okay? And Yaz will join us very shortly. But otherwise, welcome everyone, and thank you again for joining us on this Saturday morning. We are the Entrepreneurs. I'm joined together with Fidesz, who together with a collective of 6 women of Filipino heritage, are a Filipino food and advocacy group who volunteer our skills in business, design, storytelling, community building, and hospitality to promote our Filipino cuisine and culture. So the purpose of Coffee and Chikahan is really to build community through conversations. And in that way, we would like to connect, engage, and uplift in what has been, a difficult time with COVID-19 and how we navigate life interrupted. So it's really real talk with real people. And as real talk happens, real technical difficulties are also encountered. So hopefully we can sort of be a party of 4 very shortly. But the aim of these weekly sessions is to invite some special guests in the business and the creation of food experiences, so that we can talk about what it is, what it means to us to be a barrio, and what it means to partake in these conversations, and especially during this difficult time of our lives. So,
Yaz is on.
Yes, it's a great segue into Yaz's arrival as well. Yay! Thanks.
Welcome.
Yana.
Amazing.
So, go ahead.
Fantastic. Okay, just before we get into the introductions of our special guests, Yana and Yasmin, I'll just run through the format of today's session. So essentially, we'll have our guests introduce themselves, we'll run through a series of questions with our panel, and then we'll open up a Q&A session in the last 10-15 minutes. So those of us who've joined us, if you do have a question during the conversation, please direct them through to the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen. And that will enable us to monitor and ensure that we address that in the last 10 or 15 minutes. And just as an FYI, we are recording this session, and we will be sharing that post on our social media. So let's get into it. So maybe we can, first of all, we'll get Yaz and Yana to introduce yourself, who you are and what you do. Let's start with Yana. Yana's, where's she? Unmute her.
Okay. Oh, there we go.
Yes.
So, hi, I'm Yana Gilbuena.
Technically.
Kamayan pop-up dinner series. Currently not.
Okay.
COVID-19.
Oh my gosh, I think we have to get
Yana born and raised in the Philippines.
Yeah.
Go back again?
Sorry, no, we're just having difficulty hearing you, Yana.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit scratchy.
Oh, it's scratchy. All right, we'll throw to Yaz. Real time.
No, it's your turn now, Yana. I have
I know.
All right, I'm just wondering, Yana, perhaps, could you go inside or not? You think it's going to be okay here?
I think
you were perfect.
Okay.
You were perfect yesterday indoors, so maybe go back.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll go back. Hold on.
All right.
She does look so festive outside.
I know she does. The sun is looking fabulous.
Yeah.
So he has his.
All right. So while Miss Yana sorts out her connection over there. So give us an intro of yourself, Yaz. A lot of people may already know who you are, but for those that are new to finding the amazingness that is Yaz, give us an intro about yourself.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Yasmin Newman, and I'm a food and travel writer, photographer, cookbook author. Over the years, my work has featured in a number of kind of Australian magazines and international magazines, including Delicious, Gourmet Traveller, MasterChef magazine. I like to quote Oprah magazine because my Desserts of New York made it into there too. You've got
amazing.
All the names. Awesome. So yeah, my first book is 7,000 Islands, a food portrait of the Philippines, and that was released in 2013 now. And that went on to yeah, I'd like to say global success. It went through a number of print runs and has just at the beginning of, oh my gosh, what year are we now? 2020.
20.
I forget 2020 existed.
Beginning of this year or end of last year went into a new edition, which is really, really exciting for an author, but particularly exciting for Filipino food because I think it signals, yeah, just this ongoing interest in the cuisine. My second book is called The Desserts of New York and How to Eat Them All. So that was a food lover's adventure in New York City, where I ate about 400 desserts in 3 months, and it was hilariously good. And I'm currently writing my third book, cookbook, which is a new book on Filipino food. So again, really, really exciting for me personally, but more specifically the Philippines. And I guess the focus of the book is also yeah, a sign of where kind of Filipino food is at, in that it's kind of, yeah, the next wave of Filipino food. It's a mixture of kind of old artisan-based kind of recipes, but also new recipes in the way in which myself and you know, other Filipinos around the world are not interpreting our cuisine, but like riffing on it and playing with it and eating it the way that we see it in either the Philippines or in Australia or in the US, and it's wholly Filipino and wholly ours, and a little bit different, and sometimes exactly the same.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Oh, that's
I
exciting.
love seeing that your prologue, your intro actually made it into Angelo Comste's book. When I opened it up, I was like, oh my God, it's Yaz's words. So it's fabulous that you've made such an amazing community in the Filipino food writers and authors that have, you know, also published their recent titles as well. So definitely a connection point amongst our barrio, but also a connection point back to Yana, because Yana herself is an author. And if you're ready, Yana, we're ready to go. Ready?
Yeah.
Okay, intro to Yana.
Is it better now?
Yeah, definitely better. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm Yana Gilbuena. I'm the chef and founder of SALO Series, which is a nomadic Kamayan pop-up dinner series, which is now currently defunct because of COVID-19.
Yeah.
But yeah, I authored a book last year called No Forks Given, and it's about my travel throughout the 50 states, introducing the traditional way of eating called Kamayan, and all the recipes and stories that go with it.
Amazing.
I love the name. I've always loved the name. It's so good.
We love the name. We'll talk more about your books shortly, so that's part of our conversation. Question series shortly. But before we head into that, we always try to put in an icebreaker here. Although I think our technical difficulties has been our icebreaker.
Right, it calmed the nerves down. We're all sorted now. Yeah.
Nonetheless, given the title of our session is Coffee in CHIKAHAN, if we were catching up at your fave cafe or eatery, where would that be, and what would you be ordering? Yes.
Ooh. Oh man, favorite cafe. I think that would be a Samovar Tea House in the Mission in San Francisco. They have like 3 different or 4 different chais, and there's like a lot of non-dairy options, which is like really awesome. And they have a lot of and Japanese, and yeah, it's nice.
Okay.
And you can like sit out in the sidewalk and
get some sun, San Fran sun.
San Fran sun.
Yes, how about you?
Where?
It's not necessarily my all-time favorite cafe in Sydney, but I actually live about an hour north of Sydney in a beautiful beach region of the Central Coast. And in the last year or two, a new boathouse, which is quite a kind of iconic hospitality group in Australia or in New South Wales, I think, who open these really gorgeous kind of sun-swept venues always next to the water, kind of took up venue in one of these iconic places on the Central Coast, and it's like 10 minutes from my house, and
Wow.
you know, there's kind of these beautiful tall trees everywhere and kind of pelicans out the front and
Oh,
Oh
wow.
my God, sounds like a
And
dream.
it's pretty dreamy. When that place opened, we were like, hooray, because we only have a handful of places. It's really beautiful, but it's really sleepy, which is probably what makes it quite beautiful.
Mm.
So I would go down there with the kids or with a girlfriend, and probably have an indulgent kind of breakfast pizza.
Ooh.
Kids would have a nice chocolate, and I would have half of it. And I would probably do what I was doing now. Might get onto the mimosa or something. I mean, it's 10:15.
That's all right.
Right?
Hey, it's brunch.
All right.
It's officially brunch.
Yeah.
It's brunch
Yes, that's
somewhere.
Yes, that's
Who's
right.
keeping track of time, right? At this time,
I
anyway.
know, I know. And
Like
where was that venue that you and Yana had that talk when Yana was down
Oh.
under? That was a beautiful venue. Is that near your area?
Yeah, that's on the Central Coast as well. It's called Bar Botanica. It's probably about
Oh, yeah.
my place, and
Yeah.
yeah, some friends of mine own it. So basically, it's in these beautiful gardens that have been around, I think, for a couple of decades. And one of the where we had the place was like this.
Could have more people work on it.
So a yurt is like a ram brick house of sorts, and it was just super atmospheric. Like the water kind of drips down off the roof and past the window where we're all sitting. And yeah, these friends, they make gelato there now. So
Oh.
super cute. I really liked that place.
Yeah, it's
that's
gorgeous.
beautiful.
It's gorgeous. Okay, so should we start the question?
Yeah.
All right. All right. So how are you staying positive at this time and taking care of your physical and mental well-being? Might kick off with that first question.
You go, Yana. You go first.
Oh, hang on. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I guess mental and physical well-being. Mentally doing a lot of like creative outlets. Like I've been painting a lot.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'll share some later.
Okay, I was going to say, show us some. That would be amazing. Show and tell.
Yeah, actually, some of my paintings are drying out right now. But I've been baking a lot also because it's like, I think I've mentioned it before that baking is something that like really scares me for some reason. And I'm taking this time to really kind of overcome that and like get more comfortable at baking and also kind of learn new skills and add more, you know, to my repertoire and all of that stuff. So it's like I'm using this time to be comfortable with the other.
Yeah.
And, you know, I guess physically I've been doing it's called body pump.
Okay.
So it's a workout where it's like, I think it's from New Zealand or something, but it's like
I think it's Elaine Mills workouts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Body pump, they have step, they have all those, you know, those programs that are across all the gyms and stuff that are unfortunately all closed down. So I suspect a lot of the online classes are being made available.
Virtual, yeah.
And it's so awesome. Like I went a little far and ordered the, you know, the barbells and things.
Yeah.
Have you done anything with them though? That's the question. I always
Yeah.
Oh, so and that's the other thing of like in terms of like making sure that, you know, we're mentally, you know, like well is that we try to establish a routine, you know, so almost like every day or every other day we would like go for walks and go for a workout, just so it's like we also get to go outside and still get those endorphins up and running. So
Yeah, and vitamin C, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Hey, yes, how about you?
Yeah, so for me, I mean, I think like everyone, it's like a roller coaster, and you know, you go through these, you know, I guess what they call like the stages of grief, and you get to kind of acceptance, and then okay, I'm positive, and the ground shifts, and then you kind of have to recalibrate over again. But for me, like I definitely kind of try and start each day by saying, you know, okay, this is a good day, you know, and just kind of getting, you know, smiling and getting my body feeling kind of upright. And I think in just that posture and, you know, those mouth movements, you feel good. And it feels so I do that. I have, you know, 2 little kids, so most important for me is that they feel calm and not kind of concerned by any of that. So not kind of don't want to make sure that we're honest and open with them, but also, you know, protect them to an extent. So I think in trying to kind of be positive is as much for me as for them, so that they feel like life is normal, or there's some changes, but all is good.
Yeah.
And they are completely unfazed. So that's awesome. I asked my daughter the other day how she felt about it, and she went, which I thought was great. But like, I think like all of us, you know, who love food, you know, I use food in normal times to calm and for connection, and that's definitely continued, you know, every time I make a cake, it's as much therapy as pleasure. I love baking, Yana. I think you probably don't like baking so much because you're like an intuitive cook where it's like feeling and throwing things in.
Yeah.
So I like the precision and the, you know, all the measurement ratios and the science of it all. And I think in having to concentrate on those details, it distracts you from other things. And then there's the beautiful kind of colors of chocolate melting and butter and
stop.
And the eating after.
You know, the kitchen's delicious. And how can you be stressed when there's, you know, cookies coming out?
Exactly.
How often do you bake a cake? Yes.
In normal times, I would bake at least 4 times a week.
Oh my God.
Yana. Weekend, I would make at least 1 to 2 something. I just have to start thinking about something and I just want to try that, and then you want to kind of perfect. There's a couple of versions that come out in kind of close succession of each other. And then like, what do you think about this one versus this one? He's like, they're all really good. So
how can you choose?
Yeah.
Thank you for that. All right. Okay. So Grace, you want to ask? Should we go?
So I think for us, one of the key themes that we want to start exploring on these conversations is what it really means to be Filipino, Filipina X, or Filipina. What does it mean to us as entrepreneurs, since we're made up of 6 unique individuals, each representing their own stories as well. But for you, Yaz, you know, being mestiza or 2nd generation Aussie Filipino, and Yana as a 1st generation Filipino living in the States, what does being Filipino mean to you, and how does that tie into your identity in that regard?
Do you want to ask Yana? I don't mind.
You want to
Yeah, go ahead, Yana.
Oh, it's really hard with the tech.
Yeah, go first. You
Okay,
go
Miss
first.
Yaz, you go first.
So what does being Filipino mean to me? I mean, I don't know what it means explicitly, but it's something I'm immensely proud of. You know, I don't know when it happened as a child. Like, I don't know if there was a moment, but I feel like it was quite young that I kind of decided to like flip the script, you know. So, you know, you're kind of seen as Asian or half Asian or the other. And so instead of kind of being the other, I saw that as the being different as being something like that was awesome to be. Like, I'm not boring. I have this interesting story that you don't have, and kind of decided to kind of shout that loud and proud. And I definitely have my parents to, you know, kind of thank for that, because I guess that strength to be like that came from just the education they gave to me about, you know, what it is to be both Australian and Filipina. Like, every year we would return to the Philippines and I would get to know my family, and I'd get to understand all of these, what I thought were kind of crazy little habits of my mum's, but were actually kind of cool Filipino idiosyncrasies, and then I would see them in the context of the Philippines. And the Philippines, for a child, when you come from Australia, is like a wonderland. You know, they are having chocolate porridge for breakfast. You're riding on carabaos at your family's farm. You know, you know, bright purple ube cakes, and it just seems so like tantalizing and free from a child's kind of perspective. And so that kind of, when I'd come home back to Australia, I just felt so like, wow, there's this cool part, like I'm Filipino, like you can things that you haven't done. And I think and for my brother as well, that was really like, where it's just such a strength to have that other part of us. And definitely, but I think having I think the reason that I became a food journalist was to help kind of unpack that further, whether if I hadn't been half Filipino, would I be doing what I'm doing? I don't know. I mean, you never know, but I think that was really the impetus to want to understand more. Like food was that easy gateway when you understand politics. And so but when you start to look at food, it has all of those things, and it shows you so much about a place and why it came to be. And it has become my lifelong journey to understand that more.
Amazing. And obviously you've got your 2 children, and you do go back to Philippines quite often because you do have a property there. How are they finding the culture there? It's quite different obviously to Australia.
Yeah, so I wanted to do the same thing that my parents did for us. So I don't want to force them to feel Filipino, but I want to give them the opportunity to understand where they came from, where I came from, or where their Lola comes from.
Yeah.
And if they want to explore that further, they can. If they don't, that's okay. That we all have our own journey in life.
Yeah.
But we've been going pretty much every year since they were born, and they love it. My husband does too. Like, he is definitely an honorary Filipino. Like, he devours lechon like it's no one's business. And as I'm testing this book, like, just to see his eyes light up over certain dishes in the same way that Filipinos do. So
wow, that's cool.
Yay.
Okay,
that's awesome.
Yeah, with my kids, they love it. Like, it makes me really happy to see how much they love it. And we were just there for 2 months over Christmas, and Ines and I did a girls' kind of trip in Manila to do some extra research. So she was like my little research buddy, and she definitely got props from everyone because she just loves rice. So she kept ordering bowl of rice. Wow, she's a real Filipina, and she would just smile because she was so proud of that. And she does say things to me like, "Oh, when I grow up, Mommy, will I have brown skin like you? I hope so." Like,
yeah,
beautiful.
But I kind of say it's not about the color of your skin; it's what's in your heart. And
yes, 100%.
Yeah, she's
100%.
also a little Filipina too. So
Gorgeous.
interesting to see what they make of it as they grow up. But yeah, it's been wonderful so far.
Yana.
Hi.
Shirji's having a great old time.
I know. He's having such a great happy hour on that side.
Yana, what time is it there? What time is it in San Fran?
5:30.
There you go, happy hour. Friday night happy hour.
I was like, that's why I was outside earlier. But it's okay.
Good, we're good.
I guess for me, I kind of had the reverse of what Yasmin experienced, because I was born and raised in the Philippines, and then I immigrated to the U.S., I would say in my 20s. So like really early 20s, I turned 21. And it was really eye-opening because
oh boy.
Classification in terms of your skin.
Yeah.
What happened?
I think it's just on audio now. I think the stream was it was quite, it wasn't as
weird.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's okay. Okay, now it says start my video. Okay.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, there you go. I guess it was one of those things where, yes, there was still the stratification according to your skin, whether you're morena, mestiza, chinita, all of that stuff. But in terms of having to feel different was something that I never experienced growing up. Like, more than anything, it was more of like, oh, you need to be proud that you are Filipino and this is who we are, you know? So when I came to the US, like, it was one of those things where I was like, oh, I didn't think that people looked down on us, you know, because I wasn't really aware of like certain stereotypes. So like when I was in LA, people were like, oh, you're Filipina. No, that's not who we are, you know, and that shouldn't define us as, you know, as a race, as a nationality. So I think for me, that was one of the, I would say like eye-opening experiences that that I credit to being an immigrant here in the U.S. And also through my travels, like even in Hawaii, like when I introduced like doing kamayan and, you know, pretty much like celebrating Filipino food in Hawaii, and you would think in Hawaii, and I remember came up to me after the dinner and she was like, thank you so much for, you know, sharing your identity and your heritage and our culture through food, because for the longest time, like, we were not able to do that here. And I later on, like, reached, like, because Filipinos were workers, you know, they were the sakadas in Hawaii, so they were kind of classified as second-class citizens, which is, like, totally, you know, sorry to say this, but it's totally effed up, you know, like, and that also goes to the history of, like, even in California and throughout the United States, like, there's so much that's us being Filipinos from the Philippines, we're not aware of the struggles that Filipino Americans had to face when they were here. So,
right here, yeah.
So all of it was so new to me.
I think what's really interesting, and not something that I, you know, dealt with in a huge way, but a lot of, you know, second generation Filipinos or others experience is when you go back to the Philippines, for example, like, you know, you're told here in Australia, oh, you don't look Australian, but then you go back to the Philippines and you also don't look Filipino. Like my cousins love me out. I don't look Filipina. So what do I look like, or who am I? And again, I kind of was at peace with that. And also in the Philippines, they do kind of revere almost that you don't look like Filipino, which is not a great thing. You look Filos, you look Filam, that's cool. So it's not great that they praise that, but it also meant that I didn't feel uncomfortable there, that I didn't feel Filipino. If anything, wow, you look really great because you're half Australian, which is...
Yeah. Quite different to how I guess my growing up, you know, we always revered with, you know, the mestizo, mestiza, that the, you know, the whiter skin is more superior and that we aspire to be. I mean, you can see that in the media, even in their movies and whatnot, you know, they do, I guess, put it on a pedestal in some way. So it's unfortunate in that sense, but hopefully through these conversations, we can sort of unpack some of those things and maybe accept who we are. And like you said, yeah, it's being Filipino. It's not about your skin color. It's about, you know, who you are as a person and how.
Yeah.
And I definitely see that kind of change happening in the Philippines, like with, as I've traveled to different places, or with, you know, my cousins, or there's kind of embracing of their skin color, but trying to, change it and just, you know, acceptance of self, you know. And
acceptance of self, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. We didn't touch, we kind of touched on this, but if like we can go back to it and maybe have you guys tell us a bit more about, you know, what is Filipino food in your, I mean, you live it, you write it, you eat it, you make it, but for those, I mean, what is Filipino food from your perspective, and is it on the global table? If why or why not? Wanted to get your perspective on that.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
What is Filipino food?
Do you?
Is it on the global table? And why or why not?
I mean, if you want to go technical about it, it's, the cuisine that has originated from the Philippines. And mainly because of globalization, like, we were able to bring it to wherever diaspora, and that is, for better or worse, is part of our story as Filipinos, So we really want to embrace all the adaptations, all the issues, and all the, substitutions that we need to make in order to cook the food that takes us back home.
Yeah. Yes, what's your take on it?
I mean, the way I talk about Filipino food has probably changed over the years, and not that what I used to say was wrong. It's just I've kind of changing focus of sorts. So, when I wrote 7,000 Islands, particularly, from an Australian context, there was just pretty much zero out there on Filipino food in the written word form. In magazines, there was no cookbook. Mine was the kind of the first cookbook in Australia dedicated to Filipino food. So it was about giving both people who'd never, cooked Filipino food before, and maybe second generation Filipinos like myself, who's, only had kind of little snippets of it and wanted to learn more, some context on how it came to be, so going through the history of the Philippines and trying to say that, especially in Australia, because we have such kind of a rich Southeast Asian kind of food culture, why Filipino food isn't like those ones, and trying to kind of contextualize that. Now I think we're at a place where there's still a lot of kind of work to go to kind of promote Filipino food, but there are restaurants there and people are experiencing them. There is more being written about, there's more being kind of celebrated on Filipino food. So, so building on that, not so much kind of regional food, but what are all the kind of the nuances within kind of Filipino food? It's not just the kind of the Manila-centric meat-laden dishes that are probably its most famous. What is the food of Mindanao and all of those different flavors? Some of the unique produce and ingredients that are really inherent or integral to the cuisine, but that sometimes kind of get overlooked. But I actually think will be the pathway to help push Filipino food even more forward. Some of these very antioxidant kind of rich ingredients like moringa, molonga. I mean, even ube, which I never would have thought as a kid, because it was something that I kind of got teased about, when my mum would make, ube makapuno, my purple cake.
Yeah.
Now it's like that was the breakout dessert ingredient of 2018, because it was all natural, vibrantly purple, and just beautiful and breathtaking and eye-catching. And I do think, ingredients like calamansi with its kind of unique citric profile, in the same way, yuzu's kind of captured people's imagination. I think calamansi has the power and kind of already is doing that. So when I talk about Filipino food, just because my own kind of experience with it is evolving, that's probably what I'm talking about more.
And we'll see that in your new cookbook.
Yes, if I get it finished.
Deadlines. Well, this is a perfect time for deadlines to be met or prioritized, right? Since time
Seriously.
is no longer that much of an essence. But I guess just tying it back to your identity, Yana, with Filipino food, obviously you've made a name for yourself as being the creator of SALO Series, which really, and your book is called No Forks Given, and it was a celebration of the Kamayan way of eating. How have you seen the impact of what we're going through right now with COVID impacting that identity, that part of yourself, and what you're planning to do to foray into a different side of that SALO series, if it will exist on the other side of this?
Well, there's a lot of definitely reassessing that's happening in terms of just me internally as a person. And, you know, as much as I would love to keep pushing, you know, eating with your hands forward, I definitely think from a health standpoint, a lot of people are not going to go for it just because, you know, right now we're pretty much like trained to like be wary of even shaking hands. So let alone
Eating with your hands, yeah.
it's a very interesting time, you know, like I thought for a while. I mean, I've been doing this for 7 years now, and I think Kamayan has definitely gone not only nationwide, but also globally, you know, and I think now people have, you know, if my mission and purpose for doing SALO Series in the first place was for Filipinos and non-Filipinos to embrace and celebrate that, you know, like tradition of eating with your hands. And I think in those 7 years, that has already happened, you know? So going forward, I think, you know, maybe 2-3 years from now, we can revisit that.
Okay. Yeah.
But as a company person, you know, like what I'm doing in terms of like just out or, you know, training my eye towards that, you know, something that I can do remotely that doesn't require me to travel and force people to eat with their hands.
Yeah, absolutely. So back when you're both authors, is there still a place for traditional cookbooks, you think? I know, Yaz, you're working on yours. Yana, is there an opportunity for you to work on another one potentially? You know, we are digitally connected. Is there a place for traditional cookbooks, you think? And how difficult and easy is it to produce one or publish one?
Who first?
Oh, Yana, yeah, let's go. Yaz, let's go. Yaz, because Yana just had a chat.
I mean, I love books, so I think there will always be a place for books. It's not just the recipes or the content; it's the experience. You know, there is nothing. I mean, if you know, to pick up a book and to hold it in your hands and then to kind of, you know, sweep through the pages and feel the kind of the air move through that. It's kind of a tangible, you know, visceral experience. And, you know, you use it to kind of, I mean, you can see my wall, like you.
I know, my goodness.
That is about 1/10 of it, this whole wall.
Wow.
No way. Wow.
I'll show you afterwards. It's probably 2/3 my cookbooks and the rest.
Wow.
That is crazy. Wow.
Beautiful. Love it.
So, you know, it's a decorative element, it's a coffee table, and, you know, from an experience perspective, there's a story that kind of is woven through a book. It goes beyond just, you know, your recipe intro. So I'm romantic in that respect to think that other people feel the same, and I think there are a core group of people who do. But who's to know? I mean, in regards to this current book, it has been a kind of a roller coaster in that it you know, was on obviously, and then, you know, COVID kind of hit and it had to get, you know, paused because the publisher was, you know, seeing bookstores kind of close around the world. You know, it's not a necessity in a time like this. But that's arguable. But like, if you've got limited kind of funds, you know, you're not necessarily going to buy a book, especially, you know, maybe you might buy a book on canning or jamming or sourdough making, but
or painting.
The kind of knitting, that dives deep into kind of culture. You know, maybe not. But in saying that, I think as time goes, people will be looking for that more and more, that kind of, you know, sense of connection and wanting to know more. So, Yes, you can do that through other forms, but is it quite as nice? No, I don't think so. In much the same way that we can all connect digitally right now, and that's amazing. But is it the same as being face-to-face? No, it's not.
Correct.
Yeah.
Nice. So yes, I think, and I hope that there always will be.
Amazing.
Just reflecting on, last couple of weeks segments, like I know speaking to John Rivera last week, this is probably the first time he's been able to pick up all these cookbooks, which probably are to the same volume as yourself, Yasmin, but read it from start to finish. In the past, we always just sort of flip through the index and say, okay, that's a recipe for Yasmin's cassava bibinka, like let me do it now, but not actually reading the lead up to how that recipe appeared in the pages of your book. That's the wonderful, amazing sort of time that we have now to be able to do that and go along in that romantic journey that you partook in order to create, 7,000 islands. I think a lot of people are using this additional time to really read the cookbook from start to end and not just, consume the recipes that are there.
Yeah.
I always tell people to do that in my book or any book, is to treat it like a book, like read it from start to finish, because it is a very different experience, and the author has usually gone to a great lot of trouble to kind of take you on this journey. Like Yana's, you travel through the 50 states with you as you do those recipes, which is amazing.
Yana, with your book, No Faults Given, I was very fascinated that you crowdsourced that through Kickstarter, which is amazing. So really the community,
I know,
the production of it, such a big deal.
I mean, in hindsight, I feel like I probably and just but I think in regards to what Yasmin was saying, like how books take you through a journey. Like I remember just growing up, like books were my form of escape. Like I was in an island in the Philippines in Iloilo, and I remember just leafing through encyclopedias and all of these things and learning about the world that was so foreign to me. And to be able to be here on that other side and actually see redwoods and sequoias and all these like things that I just kind of read about, like the cookbooks, when you start going through the recipes and actually cooking it, like it brings you that same gratification that, that chef who made that, recipe thought of. And I feel like there's always going to be a need for these cookbooks because like right now, like travel is so curtailed, like we can't travel to Italy. So how can we bring Italy to our dining table? Like how do we bring Japan to our dining table? How do we bring the Philippines to our dining table? And it's through these foods that we're able to connect and bring these experiences back. And I think that going forward, there's going to be a lot of need for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, and building on your point, Yana, in Australia, I mean, everywhere in the world, cookbooks go through different forms in that, when I wrote 7,000 Islands, it was definitely about these kind of deep diving food and travel books. They were quite hefty, which was a fabulous time. Like, I don't think I could get a book like 7,000 Islands even published, maybe definitely not today, but like even last kind of year, because that's just not the mode Australian cookbooks are in. They're much more just, much like the digital format, they're kind of shorter, snappier, more disposable in a way.
Bite size.
And conditioned to consume all information in that same way. By contrast, I think the America has at the moment more of a push, not a push, but books that kind of go in depth into kind of subject. And, you know, it's hard for a writer like myself who likes to write those kind of books. So in Australia, you know, something that I like to write about might not be kind of topical at the moment. So it's about kind of finding a publisher and the market that kind of matches the kind of the style of writing or the stories that you want to tell. And I think moving into the future because of this, that people will want those real stories, will want more information, not just this kind of surface level move on, because our lives have slowed down, or we've appreciated that, you know, yeah, everything's just not at our fingertips and then moving on to the next thing. So.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love those bookstores that actually dedicate it to the culinary world. Like, we're very lucky in Melbourne. We have Books for Cooks, which Yana and Nicole Fonseca was able to do their book launch and relaunch of their titles last year for Melbourne Food and Wine. And I know in LA, my other home, Now Serving in China, LA, is a fabulous book dedicated to the art of culinary cuisines and so forth, and is actually owned by a Filipino-American family, Ken Concepcion and Michelle Mungual. And I think they've done a fabulous job of really curating that community that is looking to really consume that in-depth study of what it means to be, you know, a cook, a chef that's dedicated to this cuisine, or, you know, a home cook that's dedicated to this way of cooking and so forth. So I think it's fabulous that there is definitely still a market out there. And I think you'll find a lot more of that, I would say, exploding after COVID, I would say, in terms of people wanting to learn more and not having to just do the surface entry research into it.
Yeah. So just mindful of time, I've got so many other questions, but we might, I know that we've got one Q&A there waiting, so I might
keep going with the Q&A. Let the lightning round could be, yeah, disregard the lightning round. I reckon the other stuff is really good.
All right, awesome. Okay, so you've both traveled the world. Where is your happy place and why?
Ooh.
Yeah, do you want to go?
You go first,
Yana.
Yana.
Oh, Yana, you go.
Oh, damn it, why?
Melbourne.
I mean, okay, happy place. As much as I'd like to say it's the Philippines, you know, because I was born and raised there, there's still a lot of, like, emotional, you know, ties that kind of not make it that so happy for me. So I think for me, my happy place was actually in Japan.
Okay.
Like, I knew I went to Japan when I was a kid, but coming to Japan as an adult was like, I just loved how they were able to fuse the modern with the traditional with because I feel like there's a lot in the Philippines that can be modeled and adapted to that, because there's still a lot of traditional practices, like making of the vinegars, you know, like I want to learn how to make, you know, our different kinds of vinegars. We have so many different kinds of vinegars, like paumbong, you know, sinamak, and all these things. Like, I don't know how to make that. Like, I wish, you know, that art was able to be translated, like to make bagoong from scratch, you know, like, yes, there's a lot, like, you know, but how do you adapt that now that you're in, you know, the Pacific Northwest, you know, now that you're in Melbourne, now that you're in Sydney, like, how do you make bagoong when you don't have the same krill, or you don't country really inspired me, and use that lens to kind of view the Philippines in that, you know, in that way, like how still in the
I feel like
We're getting
And it's a testament that even though you're very close to Silicon Valley, the internet still sucks right now for you over there. So.
It's COVID-19, okay?
It's online. It's Happy Hour Friday in San Francisco. That's why.
So that means there's a lot of people doing this.
Well, that's true.
That
Probably
is
every
true.
household, huh?
Yeah, that's
I mean,
right.
case in point, my husband's right there and doing the same happy.
Oh,
Yes, how about you? What's your
Oh
happy
no.
Yeah, it's really interesting what you were saying, Yana, because the place I'm going to name is because of some of the things that you said and the experience it, you know, afforded me. So it's Siargao Island, which I know has become kind of very famous in recent years, you know, as a kind of a beautiful place to visit. But the reason I kind of first and foremost fell in love with it because was the way in which it preserved traditional ways. Like my husband and I first went there, I think it was 7 years ago now, because I was just doing the photography, the final photography for 7,000. Maybe it was 8 years ago now. You couldn't even fly there. You had to take a bunker over from Surigao. And, you know, it was very much that they were still like, you know, when you're in Manila in the north, you know, you're reading about, like I read a lot about how they were making things from scratch, but they kind of really weren't. They was very much kind of bottled in, you know, versions of things. But there they were kind of living off the land. They were making, you know, their coconut vinegars. They were hand pressing their kind of coconut cream and coconut milk, you know, from scratch every day. And I just absolutely loved that. And it was very much the inspiration, you know, for my book, like how do we kind of write and preserve these artisan kind of foodways, but then how can I kind of translate it, you know, for cooks back in Australia. That's been the hard part, because when I was, you know, recipe testing over Christmas there on Siargao, like I was making my gata every day and everything just tasted so exquisite. It was like, you've never tasted coconut milk like this before. Now I'm retesting, like doing the final round back here, and it's nice, but it's not the same. You can, like, it just has, you know, thick kind of coating that they've used to kind of preserve it and stuff. So it was a real experience to get to try it the way that it's intended. And, you know, like you'd walk every day, I'd walk down, you know, to the market, and I'd see someone climbing the coconut tree to kind of check that the vinegar was, you know, collecting from the top, the sap, and it'd come down and ferment it. Or you'd walk past things and they had these big cauldrons that were bubbling over because it was so fermented. It was just like, it was just so amazing. So yeah, Siargao.
Go there now. I haven't been to Siargao.
Pardon?
I haven't been to Siargao. It makes me want to go, just the way you're explaining it and wanting to look into that, you know.
This is very much the north, because, you know, the south, while it's still cool and what makes it so appealing, like it's got this, you know, bohemian kind of surf culture. It'll be interesting to see what happens over the next couple of years, because like anywhere, when a place becomes popular, people want to go there, and that's okay. But how do you preserve why people fell in love with it in the
first place?
So in the north, that is still very much untouched, and the community, or you know, there's a lot of kind of second generation Filipinos there trying to preserve that, like trying to share it, but also trying to kind of preserve it in the way they kind of found it. And that's
that's a challenge, isn't it? It's balancing the tourism as well as preserving the culture, so it's not over commercialized, and that you retain the authenticity of the place, right?
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of involving the community and having community-driven projects, and there's a lot of that happening there. Trying to ensure that the island is food secure. I mean, there's this fabulous farm, if you guys ever go there, called Bayatakan, and it's doing, you know, they're trying to, it's, you know, all organic, and they service the island, but they're also kind of doing plant-based kind of food experiences. And pardon?
what was it called?
Who owns that?
It's owned by, the land is owned by the farmer, and she's won a number of regional awards.
Cool.
And she's partnered with others in the community who do different things. So one is a Filipino-Australian guy who facilitates the kind of the tours there. So I guess he owns that part of the business, but doesn't own the land. That's members. And
Oh,
then
wow.
partnered with another friend of mine, a Swiss Filipino, who has a number of places, like he has a little kind of a snack bar, and all the proceeds go to community projects that he's organising, and just kind of creating a farm network on the island that ensures the farmers are getting kind of well paid, and that they're not importing, you know, ingredients from other
Yeah.
parts, and they can do it. Keep the money that's generated on the island in the island.
Stays in Ireland. Yeah.
So I think there's
Amazing.
some really interesting things that are happening there, and I hope that they can continue to be preserved. But yeah, the whole experience is very cool to me.
Okay.
So we have a question from the audience. So this is from Kathy, our co-guest from last week. Kathy Caprio asks, Yaz, I've mentioned this to you before, but I have a question for both of you. I'm working on a cuisine and culture book focusing on Mindanaoan food. Any tips in managing the urge to cover all topics? I guess this is a question of focus from a writer's perspective, and partly about prioritization in terms of showcasing aspects of the cultural identity. What's your sort of tips and hints for Miss Kathy and others thinking about getting into the writing world?
Who first?
I think for me, for Kathy, my advice is to keep you apart from everybody else, you know, because it's like, oh, if you want to just learn about Mindanaoan cuisine, that's a very explored, like cuisine that is very much part of the Philippines. But if you want to just take it a little notch more, like make it personal, make it your own, you know, share how, you know, how this connects with you as an individual, and as probably as a Mindanaoan, you know, and that I think alone will make it more relatable and will resonate to a lot of your readers.
Mm-hmm. And Miss Yaz, what were the tidbits that you gave Miss Kathy when you saw her in person in Manila about this question?
Well, I don't think at that point she decided to do it, so I'm very
Oh, there you go, an update.
I'm sad I can't see your face, but we can have it, organize another Zoom. So yeah, one, congratulations, it's awesome. It really inspired me, you know, about, well, yeah, just showing me Mindanaoan food was great as a first step, and kind of, you know, our role and duty to kind of, you know, push that forward. It is so challenging, especially like if you're like a history geek, to want to put it all in. Like that is the biggest challenge. You've got so much information. How do you distill that so that it is digestible to your audience? And I guess I think the first step is deciding who your audience is. You might want to write a very, very detailed tome or reference book that is intended for a niche market who really want all of that details. And I think those books are really important, because it means someone else who wants to write a kind of more abridged version can take all of that hefty research that you've done and apply it in a different format, because not everyone has the capacity or time or even ability, you know, to do that research or to write in that way. So first, who is your audience? And then once you've kind of decided that, making the form, like doing the book structure first before you start writing. You know, what is the intent of the book? How are you going to kind of break that up over the whole book, and then kind of going in smaller and smaller from there. And then, you know, so my book is this, my chapters are that, my, you know, if it's a cookbook, my recipes are this, and then I have my interludes, and then you can decide where you insert that information and to what, and how that can be digested. That would be my advice before you start writing, because otherwise you're writing and it's just kind of going everywhere. So getting that kind of messaging up front. And then when you come to write, you have a much clearer idea of how you want to say that. So you're like, okay, I want it to be a bit more bite-sized. So I'm going to make my, you know, paragraphs a maximum of 4 lines, for example, or I'll dedicate a page to this topic, and trying to kind of stick to those parameters that you've set up front.
Yeah.
Hopefully that helps.
Very practical advice and great advice. Thank you for that. All right. Got another one here. This is from Anna Marie Cruz, who's a founder of entrepreneurship there in the US. Her question is, the PH, the Philippines under lockdown, puts a lot of the poor at harm under the strict orders from the president. What are your thoughts on the food supply and hunger in the Philippines? What ways can we as an international community address this issue when we're all concerned with survival where we are? It's a big question. Your thoughts, Jan?
I think as a country in the U.S. that there's definitely a flaw in our supply system. You know, like there's a disconnect between the farmers with the suppliers, with the retailers. And we're seeing that now because, especially here in San Francisco, a lot of the farmers supply restaurants. And since restaurants are closed, a lot of these, you know, produce kind of goes to waste. And farmers don't have direct access to, I would say, like the consumers. So I know there's a lot of chefs in the Philippines that have been very vocal in terms of like putting the consumers into direct, because I forgot, I think his name is Jam Melchor, and he's one of the and he's one of the more vocal advocates in terms of like, you know, the Baguio farmers have like an excess of things, like please let's help them, you know, not waste this food, because there is a lot of, you know, I would say like Filipinos that don't have access to food. And that's the same here in America. Like there's a lot of communities that don't have access to like fresh produce. And that's something that I think we are all now realizing as a society, as a nation, that something has to change. And that change has to come from the government, you know, because it's a part, but that only goes, you know, a certain amount of time.
Yeah. Yaz, your thoughts on that one?
Yeah.
Okay. Yaz, your thoughts?
Yeah, building on what I was saying before, I mean, just using kind of Siargao as an example, and some of those initiatives that were kind of underway before COVID-19 happened, just solidifies the importance of them, like the food security of individual islands, and ensuring that, I guess what's happening on Siargao is like, instead of trying to have to import it from other places, like making sure that people can get it within, you know, and that ensures that the money stays there as well.
Yeah.
I think, you know, it's real, you know, in places like Australia or the US, and there's definitely some hardship happening there. It's, you know, we're in a privileged position to be able to, you know, go into lockdown, to be safe in our homes and to still have food to us, but for other people, they don't even have that capacity to do so. I think in the Philippines, you know, from talking to friends, some of the poorest sectors of the Philippines are unfortunately somewhat accustomed to living in hardship and capacity and experience of living off the land, but one or two kind of sectors above that will be very, very hard hit by this, or are hard hit by this, and so
I think that's a terminology that we've all heard growing up, right? Bahala na, and I think bahala na usually sort of is testament to the hardships that people have, you know, grown accustomed to and sort of developed that hard shell and hard skin to accept. So, you know, I don't know, maybe it is the fact that that middle sector that's above the poorest of the Philippines, them actually realizing the hardship that comes along with this global pandemic will actually move them to action. And that's a hope, because in the past, you could say bahala na because it was so far reaching from your own lifestyle, you didn't even worry about it. But when it impacts us all and we're at that commonality of hardship, that's when I think there's hopefully there's a possibility for action going forward. So,
and a collective action at that as well. So government,
yeah, exactly,
the community at large, I think. So, yeah. So just mindful of time, we might close off with a final question for both of you. What would you leave as a final thought to our audience?
Yeah, there you go.
Yana?
Oh, God. I guess the final thought
Might have to get Yana to
negative thoughts is not sorry. I think dwelling on negative thoughts is not gonna help anybody, especially you. I mean, I've gotten through that hole as well, where I'm like, oh my God, it will never, like, this is it, and kind of crawl into that depression hole. And I think knowing that we are resilient as people, and we will always find ways to adapt. I think is better, you know, like things will definitely get better. Yeah,
absolutely. Better
so
days
don't lose hope. Yeah.
And yes,
I think my final thought is that you know, I think this more than anything, even though it should be obvious to us as humanity that we are all one. You know, where we're all, you know, we're all in this together, and we all need to help each other. And I hope that it spurs us into further action for things regarding, like, the sustainability, for example, like that it's been a moment to pause and think that we're not indestructible, and we more than ever need to kind of bandy together to kind of get through life and the survival of humanity longer term.
yeah, absolutely.
It was supposed to be positive, didn't sound so positive. I think it will show us that we are one, and I hope that we continue in that vein.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And they're great words to close off on. And, you know, just a reminder to everyone, next week we're going to do a bit of a special episode where we're going to turn the tables on each other as entrepreneurs. As we've spoken about, we're a collective of 6 individual Filipinas of Aussie and Filipino heritage, and, you know, taking the time to really delve a bit deeper into the identity that makes us who we are and how we've contributed to our collective identity as entrepreneurs. So stay tuned for more information regarding that segment. But, you know, on behalf of the entrepreneurs, we wanted to thank the beautiful Yana and Yasmin for joining us today. It was amazing. Like, we definitely delved into areas that we haven't gone with the other guests previously in depth. And I think it's a catalyst for future conversations in the space of Filipino identity. What is that? Is that the...
like love.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Love you too, Miss Yana and Yas. It also should prove to for Des, you got to get your magic mic ready, because when it's pausing during Yana,
I should break in.
Should just break out into
will
song.
be my mic. Yeah, but then the problem is you probably won't be able to get me off.
Yeah, that's the problem. Yeah. So that could be the next game. If there's any sort of static in our next call, the magic mic comes out.
All right. Okay.
Get the conversation intermittently feel that way.
So thank you so much for your time, Yaz and Yana. It's been amazing. And we wish you well, and we hope to continue these conversations in the future. So from us, the entrepreneurs, you know, stay connected with us on Instagram and Facebook. And for now, on behalf of all of us, stay well, stay home, and save lives.
Hey guys.
Yeah. See you. Thank you.